All right. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee Break, where two nerds take a break from the compiler and learn about stuff. My name is Roland.
And I'm Kevin.
And today we'll be discussing the entertainment industry, what it's like, and who it's for. And today we have my good friend Paul. Hey, Paul.
Bully's not here. I'm just kidding. Hello, Roland. Hello, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Our pleasure. And just before we start this episode, I have a correction about the last episode real quick. A user, Potent, mentioned or corrected me on some of my comments from the last episode about how the Bitcoin halving works and everything, and I just felt like I should say something about it. He's absolutely correct when he said that the difficulty is adjusted more frequently, is made either harder or easier depending on the rate at which blocks are mined. Harder difficulty is what raises energy consumption. So I think I said something about halving being unrelated to something else. I don't even remember. I was actually really tired for that episode. But Potent, he made a very good point. So just a quick correction.
Catch.
Yeah, quick correction from the last episode. Thanks again for that comment. But yeah, let's dive into today's episode. Paul, how are you? And
Hi.
what are you drinking right now, if anything?
So, I'm not a huge coffee drinker because it tickles my bowels. So I'm actually drinking a nice cold cup of water.
Beautiful.
It's this bottle I got on Amazon. This isn't sponsored, but it tells you how much water you're drinking. So that's what I
that's
do,
cool.
keep
I need one
nice
of
and
those.
plump.
That's very neat,
It's
actually.
cool. So it says, get started, keep going, come on, you little bitch. Let's go, you and then good job. So I usually keep it very close. It's very dear to me.
So just
Cool.
just as
So,
a
yeah.
forewarning, we can't say those things. I have to edit that out now.
Oh, we can't?
It's fine.
That would've been- that would've been
It's
good.
fine.
No.
It's not fine, but
It'd
it's
be-
okay.
Can you just bleep it? Like,
Yeah, I'll bleep
just
it.
bleep it.
I'll bleep
Yeah.
it.
yeah.
But that's
Keep
totally
it and
fine.
then bleep it and leave it
Yeah.
to the imagination
So-
of your audience.
Paul has
This
had
whole episode is just going to be...
Paul's had a really interesting last few months, I would say, and we'll probably get into it a bit. We have a few talking points we want to go over, but generally we're just going to let you handle most of the intricacies of what we're talking about because you're going to be our resident expert here as our first guest on the podcast. So thanks again for joining us. We really do appreciate it. But let's just dive right in. So, actually, first we have to talk about what we're drinking, Kevin. I'm drinking cappuccino in my favorite Starry Night by Van Gogh cup. It's my go-to every night. So,
Such a nice cup.
yeah. What about
And
you, Kevin?
I have black drip coffee in the fancy Roland giving. What you said? Nicole got you guys this cup.
Yeah, from the Ritz-Carlton, I believe, if I remember correctly. So, yep. Yep. Very, very, very cool. All right.
My coffee's cold now.
Two very different vibes.
Yeah,
Two very
absolutely.
different vibes. One is wealthy, the other one's basic white girl. I'll let you decide which one's right.
All right. So, Paul, what I'm really curious about is the first thing I'm curious about is actually what was your college experience with film and the entertainment industry? How did it, what attracted you to the industry, and how did you get through college with that major?
Yeah, so initially I went into college as a biology major.
Big switch.
Well, that's not true. I went in undeclared, and then was taking STEM classes, and then I switched into engineering, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But a lot of my free time was spent on the on-campus television station, which was called UMTV, the University of Miami. And there I quickly spent all my time falling in love with the broadcast world. So it was specifically television, not so much film at first. So I was making packages, and packages are basically 1 to 3 minute segments that air on TV, whether it's news or entertainment. So you go out, you shoot it with these big cameras that they would provide us, edit it. You would do a stand-up, which is basically you go and you stand in front of the scene with a microphone and you tell people what's happening. And so I fell in love with that world, and then also did WVUM on campus, which is a radio station. So I was trying to cover all my bases, and then towards the end, I finally started doing film and joined this film fraternity called DKA. So at that point, I was heavily involved in all mediums of entertainment while also being in engineering. And my junior year, there was this program called UMLA where we send students from the University of Miami to Los Angeles for a semester as their study abroad. And we give them an opportunity to work in the industry, meet people in the industry, live out there with people who are also in the industry. And so at that point, I couldn't continue doing engineering because I had to be on campus in person to do that. So then my junior year, I was like, you know what? I'm spending so much time doing this. Let me just switch my major. And if I'm serious about this, then it'll work out. And if not, then I'll go back to school or I'll regret it. So I went with the former, switched my major to motion pictures, and I spent the semester in Los Angeles, and I was interning out there, meeting people who worked in the industry. And for the first time throughout my entire college career, I felt like what I was doing made sense, because for the most part, I was kind of confused all 2 out of the 4 years of college. Because I didn't know what I was going to do post-college. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I want to do, but I did know that I was dedicating too much time academically to engineering, but also too much time to television and production outside. So I didn't really have a clear path or idea as to what I wanted.
Okay.
But in Los Angeles, I ended up interning at The Late Late Show with James Corden. And while I was there, it kind of clicked for me that I loved being in production. I loved being in TV, and I loved the atmosphere, and it kind of felt like theater, but with cameras. And so every time before a show, I would get like butterflies, even though I wasn't the one going on air, just because I was excited to see, who the talent was, who was being interviewed. I loved sort of the rush of it all because every single day was a new experience.
Did that butterfly effect?
That was like my junior.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. Did that butterfly effect like last the entire time you were on the show, or like while you were there? Yeah.
Yeah. It did, and I think what was interesting is that in high school, to everyone listening, I went to high school with Roland. Throwback Thursday to Gateway High School. I used to come home from school and watch The Late Late Show on my sofa every single day. And I remember thinking, wow, it'd be so cool to work on this show. And I remember in high school when I was watching the show, it had just come out. It was a very new show. I think the show came out in 2015 or 2014. So it was maybe a sophomore, junior in high school. So when I was working on the show, that butterfly effect lasted the whole season because I kept thinking back to the days when I was so far from the show. And in the time that James, the host, became comfortable hosting, I was going through puberty and then graduating high school and then going to college. Like, I came of age as the show was getting better. And so to think that the show has existed for a brief amount of time, but in that brief amount of time, I became of age and became a man and decided what I wanted to do with my life. It was something I always thought about while working, because I was essentially a teen when I started watching it. So it was cool that I became old enough to work on it in the time that the show could still be around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that effect lasted the whole time.
So I'm curious. You said you started in engineering, but then you slowly started transitioning into film as you grow more. You kind of delved into that world a bit more. What was the culture shock like, going from being surrounded by engineers in class to being surrounded by film and entertainment students? on the side? Like what is the dichotomy there?
So engineering students have a clear vision of what they want. You know, they are there to study, and they finish their classes and they finish their exams, and then they have free time, as opposed to film students who in the classroom don't do anything, but then outside of the classroom they have to do everything. You know, so
Wow,
there's
that's
two
actually really
different
well
types of
put.
students, right? It's the ones who, yeah, it's the ones who go to class and take notes and then get a film degree, and then it's the ones that really care about the craft and outside of class are always filming. So a lot of my weekends were spent filming something, whether it was a film or a short film or something, a comedy skit or whatever I was working on. A lot of my free time was based on making content. And so I think one is more of a lifestyle, the other one is more career oriented and has more of a work-life balance. I mean, you're still in college, but in one of them, engineering, you can definitely divide your time well.
Yeah.
As opposed to the other, which is very reflective of what it's like in, you know, the professional world, where
Yeah.
you're kind of always working all the time. And especially if you care about it, then it's a pleasure to do. So I think it's definitely, and that goes for art in general. I think if you really are passionate about art, then you have no issue doing it all the time, of course, with respective breaks and taking it easy on yourself. But yeah, it's time consuming, and some film students just cruise through school and get a degree, and it's very easy major. And then there are others who will work their butts off to make sure they have a good film, and will work their butts off to make sure they have a good internship, because the truth is you can make a good film, but the odds of it going very well are rare. So it helps to have internships so that when you get out of college, you actually have a job to work at.
Right, because you can make
while you're making films part-time.
You can make the best film ever, but you don't know who's going to be watching it at the end of the day, right? So you need those connections outside of college and the professional. Yeah, that makes so much sense. It's actually very similar to how software works, where you need to. A lot of times, people will coast through their degree and not get any internships or anything, or those connections and the network, and they're left stranded by the end of the degree. They can't find anything. So at least there is some similarities there, but it's actually really interesting how you found yourself going into film from engineering. That's such a
very big switch.
Yeah, it's a very interesting step. But
yeah, I think engineering is still something I like, and possibly something I would go back to in the future. But I do think the entertainment industry specifically is something that I needed to satisfy while I was young.
Yeah.
So that I could be happy.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense.
Because engineering is something I'm passionate about. Yeah. I love engineering and I love the classes, and I do think I'll go back to it. But I think people are allowed to sort of reinvent themselves, and sometimes people find things that they actually really enjoy. So for example, right now I'm working on a cooking show, and one of the producers sort of fell into this job, never knew that they wanted to work in food TV, but after doing it, that's all they want to do. And so in the same way, I knew that I liked engineering, but by starting the television program on campus, it sort of validated that part of me that really wanted to be artistic and creative, that I never thought was practical, and I mean, it comes from sort of the cultural background that I'm sure we all share, coming from a place full of minorities and parents that have immigrated to the US. I think the culture is finding a much more pragmatic job. And so that transition out of engineering was me listening to what I really wanted.
Right.
Because I was studying and didn't want to do anything else.
What kind of engineering was it?
So I'm vegetarian. I'm a huge green thumb, love trees, love flowers. I was in environmental engineering. I mean, the dream was to work with solar panels and sustainable energy. And I mean, it's something I still like will spend all my time reading about. I'll read articles about it. I really do like it. And my sister is kind of the same. She's also vegetarian, and will always exchange brands that are environmentally conscious. And like, for example, the other day I switched out my toothpaste for this brand called Bite, where instead of a plastic toothpaste bottle, it comes in glass, and it's like these little capsules that you put in your mouth and then you can just brush, and so there's no
That's the
disposable
future.
waste. So when it comes to stuff like that,
It's glass.
yeah,
It's glass. And
so
it goes
it
in your
comes to
mouth?
stuff like that.
Yeah, glass in your mouth.
It's a glass bottle, and inside comes tablets that go in your
Tablets.
mouth.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And the tablets
Yeah.
are like just dry toothpaste or like dehydrated toothpaste kind of thing. That's pretty cool. That's
No, those are also
Exactly.
glass.
There's no
I was confused at first.
and then
I was a little
glass
concerned.
itself. The glass itself is recyclable, so it's
Yeah.
used to make more packages, and
Very
plastic is extremely hard. So
So pro tip: be a
so
wanna
it's
get in
something
the
I'm so
film
passionate
industry?
about. But,
be a vegetarian and recycle.
And solar.
Sorry. No, that's awesome.
honestly, yeah. Yeah.
Kevin, did you want to take up?
What's up?
I was asking for the next talking point, but how was the transition from your college experience? How did you feel that transition went into what you're doing now and like your professional life?
I don't think college necessarily is needed to be in entertainment, but I will say programs like UMLA that sent a kid like me that didn't have the funds to move out to Los Angeles were extremely imperative to even having a career now, especially graduating during a pandemic. I graduated last year, 2020. I realized that once you graduate, it's up to you to find a job. You know, the school doesn't hold your hand in finding a job. And then even beforehand, the school doesn't really incentivize you to find an internship. If you want, you can just cruise through college and not find anything. So at the end of the day, what will allow you to succeed is the desire to want to. It's not necessarily following a framework or following a blueprint, but rather, if there's something you want to do, you'll probably spend all your time navigating towards that. So if, for example, in my case, I love comedy, I love late night, I love stand-up. So naturally, all the things I was looking at, all the internships I was looking at were in those places.
Yeah.
Not because anyone told me I wanted that, but because the alternative is not doing that. You know, so when you really like something, you're going to spend your time doing it. And as a result, if you are smart about how you make your resume and you're smart about how you reach out to people and you're quick on your deadlines, you'll get to a place where you get these internships and afterwards maybe even a job. But it's the same thing for anything, right? Like if you can sit around and tell people that you want to go to med school, but if you really don't want to go to med school, you're probably not going to try hard on those applications and you're probably not going to give it your all. So I think at the core of it, you just really have to want to do it, because if you do anything for clout or status, I think that exhausts very quickly. I think you should really just do things for the sake of doing them for you, and then everything else follows. Because it gets old to start doing things because people will be impressed by you. Because once you I always say this as an example. If you get an acceptance to a job, are you more eager to read it yourself or to show it to other people? And if it's to show it to other people, then perhaps that job isn't the one that you actually want to do, but rather the one that you know people will be impressed by and will validate you with. And I think it's the same thing with film. Like, it's such a time-consuming craft to be on set for 16, 17 hours. Like, it only goes so far to say, hey, I'm shooting a movie with J-Lo. You'll get a few like, oh, cools, but then you're still stuck working 17 hours on set. So it's like, do you really want to do it? Or did you just want a quick dose of validation?
Quick resume booster kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is a very valid point. And I think that is extremely applicable to not in just the entertainment industry, but yeah, every industry. I mean, Kevin and I both know, especially right now, we are, I mean, we're not super excited, I would say, about the work that we do, but they're good jobs. And
Right.
you know, but that was very well put, I think. What you said about when you get the job offer, as something actually I'll think about the next time I take a new job, because that's yeah, no, that was very well put. I'm impressed.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I will say this. I had a job interview last week for this position, to be the assistant to the director of this like big series on Disney Plus. And I kind of thought to myself, I was like, okay, well, being an assistant to this director would be a huge deal. You know, he's working on this massive show, but it has nothing to do with what I am yearning for 24/7, right? Which is comedy. But then a part of me was like, if I get this job, it'll open doors. I can put on my resume. It'll be impressive. But then while I was interviewing for it, there was no butterflies. There was no spark. There was no, you know, I was just doing it because I knew that people thought it'd be cool if I did that job. But then shortly after, I was put in contact with this woman who's a writer on this comedy series, and talking to her was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like, I want to ask you about when you write. When do you write? Do you write all the time? Like, do your friends think you're funny? Like, are you always funny? Like, is that your only personality? I had so many questions. And I think naturally, right, that informed me on what I really wanted. So sometimes, even if you don't know what you want, you should really look at how your body responds to certain situations, because the answer is there. I think it's just a matter of accepting what the answer is. You know, I think, for example, if you want to be a dancer, and every time you see a video of someone dancing, it sparks excitement, you might be covering that excitement with the fact that, like, okay, well, dancing is cool, but it's much cooler to be a doctor. You know,
not the best
so
career
you're
decision.
already shooting yourself in the foot. Right, not the best career decision, and not allowing yourself to be excited. When in reality, hey, why don't you go dance? And then if you're fulfilled, then go be a doctor. You know, I think you don't have to do anything. The alternative to having a career is like sitting at home and watching TV. Like, no one's forcing anyone to work. You have to work because you have to pay your bills. So do you want to pay your bills in an area that excites you, or do you want to pay your bills with just any job, you know? So that's sort of what I always think. Like, what is your body doing at every specific moment when you're offered an opportunity? Listen to that, because you'll know if that's what you want to do.
Do you ever find
This feels
that,
like therapy.
So you don't ever find that, like, sometimes it is necessary to, like, take those stepping stones, that even if you are less interested, it might lead to a more promising opportunity?
Yeah, and that's definitely something I've encountered, right? Beggars can't be choosers. So if you get an opportunity in the industry, it'll always lead you closer to where you want to be. And that's the same thing for anything in life. Ultimately, you're going to get to where you want to go. And the path is never linear. You're going to have to take some detours, and you're going to have to face some obstacles. But at the end of the day, there is no bad decision. Every decision just allows you a new reality of opportunities which you learn from. So if you do a very random show that has nothing to do with what you wanted to do, you're going to meet people on that show that change your perspective on something. And then ultimately, you're going to meet people on that show that know someone else that might bring you closer to your goal. And I'm currently living in New York City, but I was in LA 2 weeks ago. I was associate producing a talk show there. And it was the first time, you know, I was allowed to associate produce a talk show, which was a big deal for me because usually I'm just an assistant. And it was
Congratulations.
amazing to be able to give creative input. Thank you. It was amazing to be able to give creative input to the show and to be so closely involved with what people are watching on camera, but it wasn't a show that I would have ever considered doing. And I almost turned it down, but I figured, you know what, let me just do this so I can associate produce, have that on my resume, and break out of being just an assistant. And in that week that I was working on that show, I gained so much confidence in myself because I was speaking to higher ups and I was speaking to executives and they were respecting what I was saying. I was giving feedback. I was logging specific moments that were important to jot down and so that the editor could find it later. I was working really closely with the showrunner and the executive producers to make sure that the props were on stage, to make sure that the talent was happy. And I was telling the assistants, which is what I do mainly, but in this show, I wasn't an assistant. I was telling the assistants what we needed and what they needed to go out and find for the set. But I was only allowed this opportunity because I accepted a show that I wouldn't have done. But in turn, I gained this like whole new perspective of what I now know I can do. And most importantly,
Very cool.
It was nice to be on the other end of sort of that power hierarchy. You know, usually I'm an assistant telling someone above me like, hey, is this okay? Is this okay? But this time people were asking me, is this okay? And I think it's always important to be given power because then you realize who you become.
Right.
Truly when you have that. So
You were the big
for
dog.
me, it was so easy to be
Yeah.
like, right. And so for a moment you think like, oh damn, I can either be like very dismissive and just say like, go get me that. Or I can thank someone for going out of their way and driving to a nearby studio to get me a prop, which is what I know I would do. And I've been in instances where I do that and people don't give a proper thank you. So I think when you're on both sides of that fine line, it's healthy because then you realize, okay, who do I want to be as a leader? Do I want to be someone who's genuine and thanks someone for the effort? And do I want to be cool? Do I want to be approachable? Do I want to be someone who a lot of people like to be around, even though I have a higher position? So it was all these cool little reflection moments that I had just from doing this show that has nothing to do with what I want to do in my career at all.
So let me ask you
this. It gave me so much hindsight,
Yeah. When you were offered this position, because you were talking about butterflies earlier and how that affects your decision when getting or approaching a new job, did you get butterflies for this offer?
No,
Deal breaker.
I didn't get butterflies.
It's done.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why for me, the butterflies inform you as to whether an opportunity is what you want. And this is wasn't what I wanted, but it was what I needed.
Okay. So
because in doing this, I met an executive producer who's well connected in New York City.
So it's a stepping stone.
Like the show, she gave me her contact.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yep.
Okay, so as long as basically, you should try to follow what you want for the entertainment industry, and I guess you can apply that to almost any industry. But at the same time, you need to make sure you're still taking care of your career and expanding your horizons a bit, and exploring outlets that you may have not considered in the past. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But to kind of dial it back in, reel it more focused on entertainment, can you give us some of your on-site experience and with some of the other professionals in the industry? I mean, you talked about it a little bit, how sometimes the producers might not be as, maybe gracious is the wrong word, or kind. Can you give us some more details about that? What someone can expect if they were to be dropped in the middle of a on-site production?
Yeah, I think in any business, and especially film, it's really easy for someone with influence to let it get to their head. And so if you aren't confident in yourself, people can really pick up on that. If you're nervous and you're shy, people can tell. and people can tell that you're new, and people can tell that, you're anxious to be there. And so it sort of influences how they treat you, and this was a breakthrough that I had, because I remember I met someone younger than me who was carrying themselves older, and so they were treated as such.
Right.
And so I figured, dang, well, really, no one's going to treat you with respect. If you treat yourself with respect and treat them with respect, then they'll assume that you are a person to be respected.
Yeah.
And so even if you're a production assistant, if you go up to an executive and you're like, hey, how are you? How's everything going? They're going to respond. But usually what a production assistant will do, or someone that's new, they'll walk up and not say anything and have their head down and assume that they shouldn't be talking to anyone higher than them. When the alternative is, it's a person, and if you speak to them, they're going to respond to you and probably be impressed with the fact that you spoke to them, because they know you're a production assistant,
They'll reciprocate,
So,
right?
My biggest takeaway is, you act as you act in the way that you'd like to be treated. And in most sets that I've worked on, I've been lucky enough to work with amazing producers and kind people. And at the end of the day, like, these people just want to make content. That's all it is. And a lot of it is in your head. When you start a new job, you get nervous and you assume that people know so much and that people are very intelligent and that people are superior to you. But the reality is, you have 18-year-olds that are pop stars, like Billie Eilish. You have 26-year-olds that are superstars, Ariana Grande. You have 22-year-olds like Michelle Obama's daughter, who's writing on an Amazon TV series with Childish Gambino. You have people of all ages who are using their skill sets to be successful. Yeah, you have people of all ages being successful.
Yeah.
So
I
just
guess
because you're working on set and you're young doesn't mean that you're incompetent,
I agree, but I guess the question was more oriented like, there's a kind of general stigma around the entertainment industry where you have more of these like diva characters where like you kind of say like, go get me coffee, and just kind of brush it off
out of the movies.
Yeah, exactly. Out of the movies. But
out of the movies.
The stigma exists, and I'm wondering, is it true? Is this kind of, is it I guess more concentrated in the entertainment industry? Or maybe you can compare it to your experiences when you're doing engineering at college. Is there like a gap here that actually exists, or is it kind of even?
Well, I mean, all stereotypes aren't too far from the truth. And the reality is that, that is very true. And it's true in all parts of the industry: film, television, radio. I mean,
entertainment as a whole.
You'll have talent that acts that. Yeah, you'll have people that act that way. And from a distance, it seems like, these people are just like really wallowing in their success and fame. And so it comes off as just like rudeness, which it is. It is. But I also have worked with people and have realized that when you are a person in front of the camera and you are meeting thousands of people all the time who either are nervous when they get you their coffee and don't look at you, or confident when they give you the coffee, I think you become so desensitized to it that instead of being like, thank you so much, I think people lose sight of that and then just say thank you, or just like grab the coffee and look away because it's being done for them so often.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I think a lot of the talent is babied. Yeah, a lot of the talent is babied so much that it becomes a habit to sort of not necessarily see people as people, but rather just like another tool on set, or another screw that's working to, make the whole thing run, or another assistant that's just simply getting you coffee.
Right.
And I like to think about it and like when celebrities meet people, they meet so many people, it's hard to have intimate conversations with all of them. So then after a while, they will just like sort of wave and maybe not even smile. And so people will say they're mean and nasty, but it, you know, would be exhausting to have to greet every single person who knew you in the world, you know? And
Yeah.
I think there's a level of respect that celebrities and talent and producers in general can have for people. But then sometimes it's easy to forget to have that.
Yeah, I think I'd like to talk about social media a little bit. How's that kind of affected you getting into the field? Is that something that they look at? Did you have to have a portfolio coming in? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So it depends on the job that you have. If you want to go on camera, sometimes they'll ask you how many followers do you have. You know, for example, if you're auditioning for a show and if you have a certain amount of followers, then they're like, okay, we like that, and it gives you a boost. Or
Wow,
for
okay.
example, if you're a model, if you have a lot of followers, then people will take you more seriously if you go into a room because you already have a following.
Oh,
It really
okay.
depends on the industry. For what I'm doing, which is all behind the scenes, no one cares. And there are producers who have 100 followers and are just like 45-year-old men who are really good at producing, but don't use social media or TikTok.
Right.
You know, like,
Sorry.
it really depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
For example, if you are a comedian and you want to be in a writer's room, it could help that you have a Twitter with 3 million people and every tweet that you have is funny. That does help. But then also, for every writing job, you have to make a packet and a portfolio with jokes and skits, and if it's good, it's good, you know? So every person will bring something different to the table. As long as it's good, it'll help. But social media definitely has been a huge force in entertainment, because sometimes I have friends who have auditioned for roles and won't get them because someone with more followers will.
Wow.
Or
wow.
vice versa, someone with less followers will get a role because the network will want someone new.
So
they
people
want
get
a
pretty
fresh
competitive
face,
about it, I'm
you
sure,
know?
then, right?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes all it takes for a show or a film or a series to get green lit is to have talent attached to it. And if the talent already has a huge following, then it's like, okay, well, no brainer. We're going to greenlight this because we're going to make money. But it's a risk on their part to just cast it with new faces. Because what if people don't watch? And that's why I always say, it doesn't matter what you're making as long as it's good and as long as it's the truth and it tells a really good story, because at the end of the day, people will watch something if it's high quality and if it's smart and well thought out. And that's the
Absolutely.
same thing like Stranger Things. You know, most of those actors weren't famous beforehand, but after Stranger Things, Millie Bobby Brown is a superstar.
Yeah, they blew
So
up.
Terrible
if
show,
what
by the
you're
way.
working on is good, it'll
Just kidding.
do well.
Just kidding. Yeah.
Well, I
That
mean,
makes
while
sense.
we're
But yeah.
while we're talking about shows, though, is there anything that like you found like growing up that like really impacted you, like maybe making this decision, like hindsight?
You know, I think the reason I went into entertainment is because in high school, I always liked comedy and I, liked performing. But I never felt like people took me seriously or took that desire to do that seriously, or maybe they did and it was all in my head, like you never know. But in the reality that I fabricated in my head is that people wouldn't take me seriously as a comedian or a performer unless I was working in it. And so I wanted my desires to be validated. And so by working in this, it brought me this sense of, okay, look, like I'm serious about this. I'm serious about comedy. I'm not just goofy, but like, look, I can make money off of it. I can work in it. I can make a living off of it. And there were moments in high school that, looking back on now, show me that I made the right decision. Because, for example, in high school, I would compete in this tournament called MIST. It was the Muslim International Scholastic Tournament. And it
Very
was for
cool.
Muslims and non-Muslims. But when I would go and attend there, I would do improv comedy in front of all these like Muslim moms and Muslim dads, and I would do like the most vulgar comedy in front of these people. They're some of the holiest on the planet, but I would make them laugh, you know. And there was also a moment where I made an improv show on campus, and we held it at like the theater on campus, and we took donations so people would come watch the show, and it was fully produced and created by us. And I had moments where I was like, looking back on, I was like, oh wow, I was doing that not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And so now I'm doing this because I am consciously aware that I want to. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
Are there any
in
like
entertainment because I want that inner child
Mhm.
of high school to be happy.
Are there any specific pieces though, like just any films or any specific shows? I know you said the Late Late Show was kind
Yeah.
of a driving
You know,
force there,
there-
but anything else?
Yeah. There are 3 pieces of content that
One of them is gonna be
forever
Jaws.
influenced me, and I think my sense of not even. So White Chicks,
Oh,
I
wow.
remember watching that
Okay.
movie
Very nice.
and being like, damn, I love that this is still referenced up until this day. There's also another movie called The House Bunny with Anna Faris. I don't know you guys.
No.
I don't know if you know it.
Never
But
seen it.
Well,
basically,
real
Anna
quick, though,
Faris is
White
the lead in
Chicks-
this movie.
Real quick with White Chicks, the scene with Terry Crews singing, that's just iconic. It's gonna be around
Yeah.
forever.
Oh, forever! And I remember when I was at the Late Late Show and I saw him in person.
Oh wow.
I just remember thinking, wow, like I have grown up and become a thinking adult, and you are still around and successful. You know, and that's the sort of paradox. That's probably not the word, but that's the sort of like weird timing with the industry, is that you can grow up and become like 21, and the people that you were watching when you were younger are also still in the career. So now you're working alongside them, you know, and you're expected to deliver and to be professional and so it's just crazy that, you know, I could go from 9 years old watching that to 21 and be working alongside him, because a couple years ago I was too young to even be working.
Right.
So it's those moments of like, oh wow, this person has been around forever.
Now
Anyway,
we're
so
homies.
The House Bunny with Anna Faris is another comedy. Huh?
I said now we're homies. Homies with Terry Crews.
Now we're homies. We're dating.
First name basis.
That's great.
First name basis. That, and there was this. I had this friend in high school who sent me a comedy routine by Kevin Hart, and it was, I didn't know what stand-up comedy was, and she sent me this routine, and it was the set where he talks about how he went home and his girlfriend woke up the next day and saw that he had a receipt for regular gas in his pocket. And she was like, "You've never used regular gas." And he was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "It's because of that regular bitch you were with. You're cheating on her." And I remember he told that joke, and I was just like, oh my God, that is so funny. That is so well thought out. And I remember wanting to have that effect on people. So I always like dreamed of like performing at Madison Square Garden because I had seen him do that.
That's
And
awesome.
he did this show at Madison Square Garden where he was in the center of the stage and there was a 360 audience. So usually, you know, at a concert, it's the artist and then the audience is the other half.
Yeah.
But in this show, he was in the middle, sort of like a boxing ring. Everyone was around him. So he would do his set turning around and facing everyone. And I remember being like, wow, I would love to do that and or produce that or be a part of that somehow. because that same feeling, I would get butterflies when I would hear like a roar of laughter from the audience. So that set by Kevin Hart is definitely something that has followed me forever. And then another movie. Oh yeah, so I said House Bunny, which Anna Faris is hilarious. She basically is from she's a Playboy bunny who gets fired, and so she goes to a sorority, and it's the lamest sorority on campus, and so she makes all the ugly girls, quote unquote, the sexy girls. And so the movie has to do with her teaching them how to be the hottest, baddies around, and it's so funny.
That's got to be an early
those
2000s
three pieces
movie.
of content, I think. Oh yeah, I think it was like 2002.
Yeah.
Something early like
Sounds
that.
about right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I'll have to check out House Bunny.
Yeah.
Then.
I mean, I wish I could say something like Finding Nemo or Avatar
Godfather.
by James Cameron. There's
Something iconic.
Godfather.
Citizen Kane.
Yeah, I think
Avatar.
more than film, I think it's a comedy. But Avatar is beautiful.
What about? Have you seen
Kiss
My
the
Cousin
Avatar.
Vinny?
You know what? No, I haven't.
All
That's a
right.
good one.
That's something you have. If you like comedy, that's a classic for comedy. I think you'd
Okay.
you'd really like that
Yeah.
one too. It's a little older, but it really holds up really well. It's a favorite in my family. So, yeah, that's
It's one of my brother's
Okay, yeah.
favorite movies. Yeah.
I'll write it down.
There you go, right up here. That's, yeah, and I just wanted to ask, or kind of one of the last things is your current schedule, and how you're kind of go over that real quick, just so to give some insight into how it is when you're really truly passionate about what you're doing, but you have to make these kind of sacrifices to make it happen. To give a realistic expectation of some of the things that you might have to do when you're entering the film industry. So, yeah, can you give us just like a real quick rundown of what this weekend was like?
Yeah, so it looks different for everyone, but being on production is being on production, right? So it's very early days, very late nights, and just to I'll give you two perspectives from when I lived in Los Angeles and when I live now in New York City. In Los Angeles, I would have a call time is when you show up, of 7 a.m. So I would wake up at maybe 5:30, take a shower, head out by 6:15 to get to set by 7. So like in LA, traffic is atrocious. So my set was 15 minutes away, but it would take me an hour to get to it because I would be stuck in traffic every morning. So LA was a little more forgiving because if you have a car, you could not shower and hop in if you're late and just speed and hopefully get there. But in New York City, you have to allot time for the subway, walking to the subway, and then when you get off the subway, walking to the destination. And then sometimes the subway is late, so then that drastically alters your ETA time. So for example, I'll wake up at 5 and I have to leave the house by 5:30. So all I have time for is to shower and put on clothes and literally leave because my subway will leave at 5:45.
Do you brush your teeth at least?
And that commute is an hour. No, I don't brush my teeth. I don't clean my hair. And I'm just kidding. So I'll do everything that I need to. And then that commute is an hour.
Yeah.
So then by the time I get to the city, it'll be like 6:45, and then I'll have to be there for a bus because I was riding a bus with my coworkers that then drives an hour up north to set. So it'd be a 2-hour commute. If you miss that bus, then you have to Uber to set, which is $160. So you have to be up and early to be able to ride that subway to then make that bus. Unless you want to be unemployed, and like find
Yeah,
another job.
right.
But sometimes
You really need a job.
yeah, sometimes you just take. Yeah, sometimes you take what you can, and so that's the reality of it. And I always mention too, the entertainment industry is like every industry. is subject to your background. So if you have parents that are well off and can help you move into Manhattan and help you with rent, then your commute's going to be 10 minutes because you just take an Uber and you'll probably pay for the Uber to go to work. Or you'll take the subway and it's, 10 minutes because you live close, but then your rent is $1,500 or $2,000 a month. But if you have parents that can afford that, then you're fine. So my advice is coming from a place where I'm very financially independent and come from no money and come from Kissimmee, Florida, where the reality is people will make $30,000 a year on average in Kissimmee. And a lot of people are on the brink of homelessness and will live in motels. And so knowing that, I never really had anyone to ask for advice because I went to a private university and a lot of people at come from a lot of money. And the people that I know from don't necessarily always relate to my financial struggles.
Right.
But that being said, I always tell people, just make it work for you. If you can only afford something that's $900, then look outside of the city of Manhattan and go to Brooklyn or Queens or realize that you might have to wake up earlier to make your dream work until your dream starts working and you start making money and then you move into the city. But then I will say that I would prefer to hire you because you're a lot more aware of the realities of the rest of the world. Not everyone in the world is wealthy or well off. So I like to always ask people, where do you come from? What's your background? Not because I want to bond with you because you have beaches nearby, but because I want to know what your family does. Does your family support you? Are you self-supportive? Are you self-sufficient? Because that makes a huge difference as to what type of employee you are,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I also don't even know what the question was. I might have gone off on a tangent.
We went off.
But yeah.
It was, what your weekend was like, but...
Oh, my schedule. My schedule. My schedule, so my schedule is crazy. So I'll get to that bus, like I said, 7 a.m. I'll get to set at 8, and I'll work from 8 until 9 o'clock. Then from 9 to 10, I'm back on the bus at p.m. Then from 10 to 11-ish, 11:30, the subway back home. So I don't have time to do anything that I love to do during the week. I don't have time to work out sometimes. It's a long day, and that's a typical day on production for any show.
That's incredible.
And so that's why there are different areas of entertainment. You can work in marketing, and so you'll work 9 to 5 to market the show that I'm working on for 16 hours.
Yeah.
You can work in social media, so you'll post about the show that I'm working on, but you'll do it from 9 to 5. And then you have the rest of the day to work out, do your thing, So what my experience is specific to production, because there are people in the industry that would never touch production. They're like, no, I don't want to do production. Production is a hassle, but production is being there and tangibly making decisions as to what people are going to watch.
You're making a difference on the content itself.
You can be an agent in the entertainment. Yeah. You can be an agent or a manager, and you're representing the writers of that show. You can be a development coordinator, and a development coordinator is basically people who read scripts and say, this is good, now production, go make this. So there's so many areas of the industry that you can work at if you don't want that sort of schedule. And there's the business side where you decide how much people make or how much you're going to buy a script for, how much the budget is. Is it going to be 100 million? Is it going to be 50 million? Is it going to be indie? Are you going to force a group of people to fundraise for it? There are so many parts of the industry that people don't even know about and that I don't even know about until you get in it and you're offered a position and you're like, what is this? And it's like, oh, you're the assistant to the coordinator of financial independence of international affairs. And it's like, what? And it's basically the person who makes deals with other countries to sell that and put in their movie theaters.
There's a position.
My experience and my schedule is very.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a position out there in the entertainment industry that can suit everyone's needs, but if you want to get in the nitty gritty like you and your associates, you're gonna have to dedicate a large part of your life to this, at least at the beginning, right? And getting everything situated. That's some dedication that I don't have.
I think that shows a lot about somebody's character, though. Getting into it.
Absolutely, man. It's
Yeah.
I can't fathom, if I'm being honest. I'm a remote worker.
I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, I'm a remote worker. I wake up, I do my 8:30 to 4:30, sometimes 9 to 5, because it's flexible, and then I'm done. And then I'm at my computer all day. I don't have any commute or anything. So, but the month, I can't even imagine how good it's gotta feel good to have that. not like that, like not oh yeah, I'm super excited to take this 2-hour commute. not like that. It's more like you must
Roland, we should go to New York for a day, man.
Yeah, you must get a lot.
We should go live this out for a day.
Like you were saying, validation. It should, the projects that you're working on, like the things that I'm passionate about is like when I make videos on the side, or when I do stream stuff on the side, and I spend I found myself spending, like one time I spent 40 hours editing a video of mine. It was hard, but at the end you feel like, wow, I actually did something. I made something. I participated and created something. And I can imagine that's basically what you're doing, and that's awesome, dude. And that takes a lot of dedication. That, I mean, you have a crazy work ethic, is what I can say. It's really honestly inspiring. So we're almost out of time here.
Oh yeah, I actually don't even know how long we've been talking. I don't see the clock anywhere.
We're at 57 minutes, but I'm sure Kevin has a couple questions he wants to ask you. So give him a chance.
Wait, I do want to get a question.
What was that?
Have my answers been that long?
A little bit.
We went through this.
So some of them kind of went off a little bit off track, so we had to dial it in a bit.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was all really great. But go ahead, Kevin.
I mean, I just want to add that there was just so much great information that you gave out. Like, I mean, just as we're hearing it, it's just super insightful. So you gave some really great answers. I do want to ask though, since we're getting to that time. Just as a side note question, if you had to pick a favorite dinosaur, what would you pick and why?
1 second. I just got a text from a manager. Feel free to cut this out and ask this question.
I got you were deep in thought. You looked like
this is the most appropriate. This is the most appropriate thing that could have happened. Actually, this. No, you're fine, man. Actually, honestly, we'll end it there.
Leave this in.
And we need the answer.
We'll get the answer for next. We'll get the answer for next week. But
next week.
Paul, really, really do appreciate you making the time. I know it was kind of. You like I said, you had a really busy weekend. You've been a busy guy for the last, honestly, ever since we have been talking while you're in New York. So just for you to take the time to do this, it really means a lot to both of us. And we hope anyone who might have been listening got something to gain from this, from Paul and his firsthand experiences in the entertainment industry. So, yep, once again, really appreciate it, Paul. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you. Also, I did hear your question. I think you asked me what dinosaur I like. I'm so sorry. I had to text my manager, but it's a pterodactyl.
You're good.
There you go.
Pterodactyl. Okay. All
right.
Is there a reason why?
Roland, thank you.
Can we add that in?
This is great.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. But with that, we're gonna go ahead and
thanks for coming on, man.
And call it a night. Thanks for listening, guys, and until next time, have a great one.
Like and subscribe.
Bye.